and welcome to this episode of John's Motorcycle Rescue and Review. Today we are looking at Suzuki's fearsome TL1000S, and this bike was produced between 1997 and 2001. This is the 9th in the Blast from the Past video series. I've owned a lot of really cool bikes over the years, so I thought it would be fun to open up the photo album and share some of the pictures and the memories with you. We will be looking at the history of the TL1000. We will also be looking at TL1000 specs, and I'll be talking about what the TL1000 was actually like to ride and giving my riding impressions of the bike and then my conclusions. Back in 1994, Ducati had shocked the motorcycling world with its iconically beautiful 916. And it's really the design success and racetrack success and sales success of the Ducati 916 that inspired bikes like Suzuki's TL1000S and Honda's VTR 1000 Superhawk. In Cycle World's 10 Best Bikes of 1997, the TL1000S won Best Superbike of the Year. When the TL1000S was initially released, several of the European testers were killed due to wheeling and then tank slapping incidents. It instantly earned the TL1000S a reputation for being a widowmaker. In response to the outcry against the TL1000S, Suzuki recalled all of the bikes and they retrofitted a steering damper to the top triple clamp. The steering damper went some way in taming the tank slapping tendency of the TL, but it also really slowed down the steering, and I'll touch more on this later. TL1000 specs. The TL1000S had a 996cc L-twin. It was liquid cooled. It was fuel injected. It had 4 valves per cylinder. It came with an oil cooler in addition to a radiator. It also had a 43mm inverted Kayaba shock with 4.7 inches of travel, and it was adjustable for spring preload, compression, and rebound damping. The rear suspension was also adjustable for spring preload and compression and rebound damping. And an interesting thing on the TL was it used what looked like a conventional shock in coordination with a rotary damper, and so it handled the damping separately from the spring. The front brakes on the TL were big, 320mm floating discs. It had dual 4-piston calipers. The rear brake was a 2-piston caliper, and it operated on a 220mm disc. It had 17-inch wheels front and back, and it had a wide 6-inch wheel on the back and a 190/50/17 tire. The seat height was 32.9 inches. It had a 4.5-gallon fuel capacity, and it had a wet weight right around 465 pounds. Power from the L-twin was right around 115 horsepower at the rear wheel. With simple slip-on exhaust and a little bit of tuning, they easily made over 125 horse at the rear wheel. I was just getting into sport bikes in the early 90s and the mid-90s, and the TL1000S was really a dream bike for me. I had a huge full-size poster of it set up in my workshop, and I wanted one so bad. I read all the reviews. It got good reviews when it initially came out, and I was sold. I wanted the bike. Styling-wise, I thought the TL was a very nice-looking bike. I liked the fact that it looked different than other bikes on the road. I didn't mind that it wasn't a fully fared bike. I just thought it was a cool machine. Fast forward a couple of years and I picked up a lightly used secondhand TL1000. My personal TL1000 was the British Racing Green TL1000 with gold wheels. It was a beautiful bike. So what was a TL1000S like to ride? The first thing I noticed on the TL1000 was the seating position. It had a very high seat height in combination with pretty aggressively mounted handlebars. And so I really sat over the top of the bike. For me, it wasn't a super comfortable riding position. I'm a tall guy. I'm 6'4". I know that factors into my impressions when I'm riding motorcycles, but I felt like I was going to go over the front end of the bike. Another thing that struck me immediately was the abruptness of the fueling on the TL1000S. As an L-twin, it really liked to be above 3,500 RPM before the power smoothed out. But when you got on the gas anywhere above 3,500 RPM, this bike just rocketed. But unfortunately, when you got back off of the gas, what happened was it decelerated very strongly. And so that abruptness actually made it feel fast. It made it easy to pick the front wheel up. It was actually a very difficult bike to kind of keep the front wheel down on the ground. It made very nice power, but the power delivery, the way that it was fueled, it was like a light switch. It was either on or off. I had a difficult time coming to terms with that and being smooth in the corners. Another thing I noticed right off the bat was the heaviness of the steering of the bike. Especially at low speeds, it really didn't want to turn in, and then even at higher speeds when you went to turn it in, it really required some effort to it. It felt very heavy, very truckish, and not unlike Ducati's 916. One of the things I did to mine to quicken up the steering was to remove the steering damper, and immediately I liked the handling a whole lot better. It turned in much more easily, and I'm not much of a wheelie guy. I'll occasionally bring up the front wheel in a straight line, but I never had any issues with the bike tank slapping or threatening to tank slap. Handling wise, the TL didn't handle badly. Really, the things that hampered it in the corners for me was the slow turn in, and I didn't find the chassis to be super communicative. What it all added up to in the end was a bike that when I would get on it, I would have to ride the bike for about an hour to get comfortable with the bike, to really feel like I could trust it in the corners and to really start to push it a little bit in a sport riding environment. For me, it was a difficult bike to ride quickly with confidence. And I always had in the back of my mind that it might tank slap on me, that it might do something unpredictable. The abruptness of the throttle also meant that mid-curve, if you needed to change your line, if you needed to get off the throttle or back in the throttle, there were all risky propositions when you're in a corner, because if you let off the gas, it would decelerate and throw off your line. It would make the bike want to fall into the corner. If you got on the gas, it would accelerate very abruptly, and it would push you wide on the corner exit or mid-corner, which you definitely don't want. So it just wasn't an intuitive bike to go fast on. It wasn't a bike that I felt comfortable on, and I had a much, much easier time going fast on my ZX9R than I did on my TL1000S. Was the TL1000S exciting to drive? Yes, it was very exciting to drive. That engine noise it makes is just beautiful. It felt so much faster than the 115 rear wheel horsepower would suggest. In conclusion, prior to riding the TL1000S, I was in love. I was sure that it was a bike for me. I was sure that it was a bike that I would fall in love with as soon as I rode it, and I couldn't wait. And when I actually got the chance, when I actually owned one, I was really surprised at how difficult a time I had transitioning from my ZX9R to the TL1000S. In the end, I think the TL1000 is deserving of its reputation as a man's bike, as a bike that's not that easy to ride, as a bike that might threaten to throw you off every now and then. It was kind of like riding a bucking bronco. It was very exciting, but you didn't know when it was going to try to throw you off unexpectedly. I think the TL1000S's looks have really held up over time. I think that engine is a gem. 6-speed transmission on the TL1000 is phenomenal. Very slick shifting, very nice unit. The brakes were great. The suspension and the chassis were so-so. The rear shocks never garnered much love, and it's telling that Suzuki didn't continue on with the separate rotary damper concept. The TL1000S was certainly a thrill ride if you like doing wheelies. It's an easy bike to wheelie on, and it's a neat machine. It's a beautiful machine. Well, I'd love to know what you guys think. If any of you out there own a TL or have owned one in the past, please feel free to share in the comment section below. As always, I hope you found this video entertaining and informative, and until next time, enjoy the ride.